The Sony Xperia 1 Mark II has been undefeated in speed tests in my channel thus far, but how does it stack up against reigning champ Oppo Find X2 Pro? Well, the Sony and the Oppo both come paired with Qualcomm's latest Snapdragon 865 processing chip. They both have LPDDR5 RAM, though the Oppo has 12 while the Sony is stuck to 8, and they both have UFS 3.0 storage. Here are the hardware specs. Feel free to hit pause here for more information, and we have updated the softwares on both devices over here. We will be using that wonderful 4K resolution on the Xperia and QHD Plus on the Find X2 Pro, and the Find X2 Pro also has a 120Hz display, so we're going to keep that enabled, and we're going to enable motion blur reduction on the Xperia. We're going to enable high performance mode on the Oppo, and we've disabled all animations on both devices for raw performance speed here. Round 1 will be all about boot and going into the phone itself, as well as fingerprint unlock. Round 2 will be all about speed, and round 3 will be all about RAM management. I'm going to be using my fingers over here, so to keep things accurate, we're going to pop GoPro footage at the bottom left hand corner. Guys, this is TechNick, and without further ado, let's go. We're going to start off here in round 1 with a simple boot. I've sped it up at the bottom right hand corner. 15 seconds for the Sony as opposed to 20 on the Oppo. So 5 seconds quick over there with a boot getting it its first point in round 1, which is great. Going into the phone itself, refreshing the app icons first is indeed the Find X2 Pro getting it its first point there, now matching that of the Xperia. We have a physical fingerprint sensor side mounted on the Xperia and an under display fingerprint sensor, which is indeed optical on the Find X2 Pro, which is no doubt faster every time. The Oppo fingerprint sensor is a lot faster than even the OnePlus 8 Pro, and the Sony was pretty similar to that one, but nevertheless the Oppo gets its second point over there in round 1, closing it off there 2-1. Round 2 is going to be all about initial opening app speed, and we're going to start up here with the camera. All apps have been closed in the background as I showed you guys. The Oppo opens up the camera app slightly quicker and flicking to the selfie camera as well slightly quicker there, though the Sony takes the snap slightly faster. Our next app here is photos, and unfortunately with the Xperia we're stuck to Google Photos. There is no Assistem Photos app as I showed you guys in my unboxing. Make sure you go check that out after this. So the Oppo was quick over there. It was too close to call with the calculator app over here. So far we have 3 points on the Oppo as opposed to 1 on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II, but things get really interesting later on, so stay tuned guys. Going into the phone app, the Oppo is quicker once more. It seems like the Oppo is faster with all system apps because most systems apps on the Xperia 1 Mark II are actual or Google apps. But going into the first non-system app, which is speed check over here, the Xperia 1 Mark II picks up its second point there, now just 3 points behind the Oppo Find X2 Pro. 22 seconds to run the test. We're not focusing on download and upload speed here, but more so how long it takes to run through the speed test over here. Both of them got 22 seconds, so no points were allocated over here. Next app that we have on the table is Spotify, and going into that, the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II picks up its third point, now closing the gap between it and the Find X2 Pro, which has just 5 points, only 2 points ahead now. Next app that we have here is Photoshop Express, and going into it, things were very similar there, so no points were allocated. Going into the photo itself, the Xperia 1 Mark II grabbed it, and going ahead and exporting the photo over here, both with UFS 3 storage, the Xperia 1 Mark II showed save to gallery at the bottom of the screen slightly quicker than it did on the Find X2 Pro. Now it's 5 points apiece. Going into Adobe Rush over here, a video editing program for mobiles. It was too close to call when going into the app, but the Find X2 Pro opened up the project slightly quicker, getting it its extra points over there. We're going to go ahead and export this 4K 25 frames per second clip, and we are going to compress it down to 1080p and match the frame rate of 25 frames per second. I'm going to speed things up at the bottom right hand corner, as you'll see in a second. Let's see which one can grab it first, both with UFS 3 storage, but the Oppo gets it in 14 seconds as opposed to the 16 seconds on the Xperia 1 Mark II. Very similar here, but the Oppo still grabs that point, now 2 points ahead of the Sony. Next app is Astral VPN. We need a VPN here in China in order to open the next couple of apps. The Xperia opens it up quicker, and both of them turn it on pretty similarly. Going into Facebook, our first social media app over here, the Oppo opens it up quicker and loads the entire page faster, now getting at its 8th point, so once again 2 points ahead of the Xperia. Going into Instagram, though, the Sony quickly snaps back an extra point with 7 points, and the same thing can be said with Twitter. Once again tying here. The Xperia hasn't taken the lead yet, but going into YouTube over here, it does with 9 points, now 1 point ahead of the Oppo. Going into my profile over here, TechNick, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. These videos take a hell of a lot of effort to do, and the Xperia gets its 10th point there, now 2 points ahead of the Oppo. Though the Oppo opens up the video and loads the whole page quicker, so it gets its 9th point there, now just 1 point behind that of the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II. Next app that we have here is indeed Netflix, and going into it, the Sony Xperia opens it up quicker, and going into my profile, once again the Sony grabs its 12th point, now 3 points ahead of the Oppo Find X2 Pro. Next app that we have here is Google Chrome, the last row of apps here, and it is opened up faster on the Sony. Once more now, 4 points ahead. First game of the bunch, first of 4. Going into Subway Surfers over here, let's see what happens. It is extremely close here, so no points were allocated whatsoever. Very, very close there, too close to call. For my eyes, even slowing it down was pretty much matched. So still 4 points ahead on the Sony. Next game here is once again flip diving, and once again too close to call. No points were allocated. Both of them are opening up games nice and snazzy, just the same as the other one. Going into Temple Run 2, I've sped things up, slowed it down again, and finally the Xperia grabs a point in the gaming department, making it now 5 points ahead of the Oppo Find X2 Pro in round 2. Going into our last app here, our last game as well, PUBG Mobile. A lot longer to load over here, a lot more graphics intense. We sped things up 19 seconds on the Xperia as opposed to 22 seconds on the Find X2 Pro, so it is indeed 3 seconds quicker. They're getting it its 15th and final point in round 2, which is now 6 points ahead of the Find X2 Pro when it comes to speed. Round 3 is all about RAM management, and the Oppo kept the camera app open while the Xperia 1 Mark II killed it, so I allocated a point over there, but the rest of the apps over here, both of them keep them all open, regardless of there being 12 gigs of RAM on the Oppo and 8 gigs on the Xperia. They're both rocking the same speed of RAM, which is LPDDR5 RAM. I'm not really taking into account which phone can reopen the app quick over here, but more so which can keep it loaded in the background. They've both done a fantastic job, but the Oppo just one-upped the Xperia 1 Mark II here when it comes to RAM management, literally. Total points here, 16 for the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II as opposed to 12 for the Oppo Find X2 Pro. The Sony is now officially the true champ of my channel. It will need to go up against the Red Magic, however, and in round 2, the Xperia 1 Mark II got 15 points when it comes to raw speed, as opposed to 9 on the Find X2 Pro, making it 6 points quicker in raw speed. Guys, I hope that you enjoyed watching this video as much as I did making it. This is TechNick, and I'll see you in the next one.